Hi, everyone. So I'm Robyn, and today this panel is about independent music labels and the possibilities and challenges with AI. So we've got a great panelist here. All three of these people actually know each other for years. And I'm also kind of the odd one out. So I work for an AI music company, and they're obviously working from the side of how to protect the artists. So this is going to be a very interesting panel. And we're going to just go see as we go. And each person is going to talk about what they're doing and essentially these possibilities and challenges and what we can do going forward. So if you could each start and do an introduction of what you do. So Angel, I'll let you start and then pass it on, please.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Michel Labrusse, working as Digital and Public Affairs Manager at Impala. We represent the independent labels in Europe, and that's about 6,000 independent music companies. And I deal with all the reflections, dealing with, digital. So that's quite a wide topic, but streaming, AI, emerging tech in general. So happy to talk about this later if you need.
Michel Lambot, I'm one of the two co-founders of a company called PIAS, which is an independent label and distribution company. We in 4 continents, one of the big companies in the world. I'm also a co-founder of a company for this subject, which is called Mirelo, which is a digital aggregator. And I'm getting old.
We're all aging at the same rate, Michel. I'm Paul Pacifico. Hello. I'm from the UK originally. I had a career in the music industry as a musician and an entrepreneur with a small business in the UK. I moved on to the policy side of music as CEO of the Featured Artists Coalition, representing the interests and rights of artists in the industry, and then ran AIM, the Association of Independent Music in the UK, which is how I got to know Angel and Michel through the European umbrella Impala. More recently, I moved to Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, where I have the job as CEO of the Music Commission, with responsibility for developing the music sector for the first time in Saudi Arabia.
Great, thanks for the introductions. So Michel, I want to start with you, being someone who started an independent music label. Could you speak to us about the rights that creators have and publishers, and how you're feeling about AI, and what are the possibilities and challenges that you're seeing there?
I don't think we need to divide the rights between a writer, an author, a performer, a publisher, a producer, an artist producer. At the end of the day, we all together trying to release some good music based on good songs. And obviously, we spend a lot of time deciding which pieces of the cake we want to eat. But for me, that debate should remain an internal music debate and should not be in the open sphere. I'm a publisher, and therefore I have to arbitrate within my own company the problematic of sharing the pie. But I feel, especially independent of majors as well, by the way, we should all be concerned by growing the pie rather than dividing the pie. My main concern is making sure that rights are protected. That if you look at the price, the consumption price between 1962 and now, it keeps on going down, inflation-based. And I think I would not like to see a world where we will sell a piece of music at the price we were selling it in 1962, because it was a lux consumption. But again, it's very important for me that we try to protect rights, and we try also to help increase new technologies, because when I started, we were releasing cassettes, and then we moved to cassettes and CDs, and then we moved to cassette, CDs, cassette and vinyl, cassette, vinyl, and CDs, and then we stopped cassettes, and then we nearly stopped vinyl, and then we get iTunes, And at the end of the day, when I started, which was 45 years ago, and now, my job hasn't really changed. My job is to find good music and being able to find a way, a path to the public. I'm not a CD manufacturer.
Which it makes a lot of sense. Just to also let you all know, I'm also a composer. So working in AI and music, I see it almost like when MIDI was seen as getting rid of the session musician. It's a new technology that can maybe help the creative process. But Angèle, I want to move to you because I know you're putting some great laws in place which greatly connect to what Michel was saying.
Not myself, but...
Impala.
Maybe just to bounce back on what Michel said a bit and what you said also, it makes no sense to talk about the division of rights right now because AI is impacting everybody across the whole spectrum of music in the industry. We're all impacted and we all use AI somehow, I think at some level, some not now, but it's starting and it's probably going to increase. And that's what I wanted to say. Just from the get-go, maybe AI is and has always been a fantastic technology. It's simply amazing. It's been harnessed by the industry for years now. If you go back to the 90s, I don't know, with autotune, for example, which is using algorithm to correct pitch in real time, that's 1997. So, I mean, it was like the early age of technology, of course, and it has increased and evolved so far. And now we're talking about prompts that are creating music themselves, and that's to link back to what you said about the possibility of AI replacing music. I don't think this is really the question we should ask ourselves right now because it's not there yet, definitely. You may have played with Suno and Udio. It's great, it's fantastic, it's fun, but it's not like a proper song yet, just now at least. Probably will become in the future. But yeah, you have this survey from Youth Music that says that 67, I think, % of young musicians are using AI on the day-to-day creation of music, whether it's music creation on its own or mastering or even using platform to generate pictures to have their own artworks. So yeah, it's fairly used. It's going to be used in the future. The only thing is that when we talk about generative AI, because I think this is going to be like the most burning issue. It is already, but during this conference you will talk about it quite a lot, I think. It's super fun to use, as I said, but yeah, it cannot be based on scrapping the fact that they were scrapping copyrighted contents that is not remunerating artists for that, and that is not even labeling and displaying the songs that were used to create those new generated songs. So yeah, that's the main issue, and I think that's what the majors are trying to show in the US with you mentioned the Suno and Udio lawsuits. Very, very interesting one. There is, I don't know if you know this YouTube channel, the guy is called Jesse Josephson. He's doing this channel, Sync My Music. It's a very, very interesting channel. And he's been looking a lot into these lawsuits. And he's showing in his video that when you enter a prompt to create a Christmas song, for example, on Suno and Udio, you get Mariah Carey's All I Want for Christmas Is You. And it's not just like a vague resemblance, it's the same song, the same melody, the same chords, the same lyrics, just, adapted a bit to the prompt you enter. You also have the platform spitting out some producer styles. So like, these vocal trademarks that you can hear in songs only for like rap music, whether it's DJ Khaled or Holiday Season, these kind of things, I think the artist that was concerned was Cash AP. But yeah, so how can you, as Suno or Udio, say that you are not training your tool on copyrighted content when you actually spit out that kind of creations, And this lawsuit is very interesting because it made Udio kind of retract its comment, and they are now admitting that they have used copyrighted content to train their model on. But that's in the US, and in the EU we have what is called the EU AI Act. It's going to be very interesting to follow what becomes in the future, but it's really the world's first legislation trying to create a comprehensive framework for generative AI platforms. We're talking about a clear confirmation that generative AI platforms have obligations related to transparency and copyright. So, I mean, I have them in details here. I'm not going to read the exact paragraph of the law. I can, that's why I wrote them down. But basically, with this act, generative AI platform have to provide a sufficiently detailed summary of the content they have trained on. This is super important when you want to get a license, because if you don't know if your content has been used for the model, how can you just try to get a license? It doesn't make sense. So that's like first and foremost. Second, the platforms have to label, to create a process whereby the creation is labeled as artificially created. This is also important for other issues that impact the industry, notably on streaming and the dilution and the fact that there are so many manipulated songs right now, not playing necessarily, but at least uploaded on the platforms and on TikTok, that the consumers, they don't know what the original song is. So it creates a confusion, and the original artist doesn't get remunerated from that. So labeling is very important also in terms of maybe more dangerous topics or political topics with what the deepfakes can bring, whether it's for political elections or anything else. And third, the AI platforms have to make sure that if a company wants to reserve their rights explicitly, they have a process to do that and make sure that this is respected. So it's three clear affirmations that generative AI platforms have obligations when it comes to transparency and copyright.
Great, thanks for laying those out for us and also giving some more insight. I do think it is really nice that all three of you are very open to knowing, look, this is a new technology, it's not something we should be scared of, but actually work together. Because I think online you can really read the complete opposite as well. I know, Paul, you also have some great insight here with your background as well, because we were speaking in the background. It's similar to what Angèle was saying, where you could be using a song that sounds like yours or sounds like your voice, and it's using it for something that maybe you don't stand for. I don't know if you want to elaborate there, or if there's something else you want to bring up that's maybe been mentioned here.
Thanks, Robyn. There were a couple of key themes I wanted to make sure that we cover, but to respond to your question first, I think the conversation about moral rights is important. If you're an artist, if, let's say, your song is requested to appear on an advertisement and it's for a product that doesn't align with your values, as an artist, you and your team have the opportunity to decline that opportunity. That's very important. If your music is identifiable in the output of a generative AI, and even if you're remunerated for your contribution to that work in some way, I don't know what the extension of those moral rights would be for the multiple artists who may be contributing to that new work that's produced by the generative AI. But I think there's an important conversation to have, because if it sounds a lot like All I Want for Christmas Is You, and people associate that AI track with Mariah Carey, and that AI track is then used to promote a political campaign, or perhaps a defense company or a bioscience company that for whatever reason Mariah Carey doesn't align with, would she have the opportunity to put her hand up and say, actually, I don't want this to happen? I don't know, but I think it's part of the conversation that has to be taken forward if we're going to maintain a kind of viable, respectful link between the artist and their creative work. But jumping, I know that's a contentious topic, but jumping to a couple of other themes I just want to make sure we touch on. One is around the split between, we're talking a lot about generative AI, but I think it's been mentioned, AI tools have become normalized in the creative process. So whether it's quantizing tracks, automated mastering, there's lots of algorithmic and machine learning that's, products that people are using. And I kind of wonder what the impact will be for the long term on a new generation of creatives coming up, where you've got a trade-off, I think, between accessibility of creativity. So you've got a digital app that you jump on and you can start creating stuff immediately, and there's a real sugar high for that, for being able to produce results straight away, versus just having Lego blocks where everything starts to sound the same. Because if everything's generated through those simple-to-use, kind of AI-driven platforms, everything exists within a similar framework. If you're quantizing everything, everything's on the beat. Are you really starting with a blank piece of paper and sketching something very new and innovative? I don't know. So I don't know whether generative AI is going to lead us into a bit of a rabbit hole creatively, and how easy it's going to be to break out of that. And then the other theme I think is really important to touch on, and you mentioned it, is I think it's inaccurate to characterize the debate as a replay of the kind of YouTube music industry, European copyright directive moment where I think many lessons were learned, and I think the music industry is in a much better place to have these conversations. So specifically for independents, I think there's a really important bridge to build between tech founders and the founders of independent music companies, because then, small music companies can move quickly, be nimble, be creative, be innovative. One conversation between founders can lead to, a sandbox to really experiment together and innovate together. That's a real opportunity in the independent music space. Each individual independent may have smaller catalogs, so you won't have the big data set that you would have working with a major. But I wonder whether early stage startups need that big data set to really even get started and experiment. So I think there are specific reasons why independent entrepreneurs in music and in tech should get together. Different sort of threats and opportunities, but a very specific use case. And I think conferences like this are important to get those stakeholders together and make sure those relationships are happening, because I think there's a lot to benefit from.
Probably why we've been put on the stage together. It is also interesting that you're saying about different generations listening to different music. I don't know if anyone here is Gen Z, but because of TikTok, people will make songs faster to put them on their videos. So there's the famous Aerosmith one, but it moves the pitch as well. So you can actually look this up on Spotify, you can look up TikTok songs, and for them, they're normal. And they, for us, because we grew up listening to these songs, you're like, what is this? So yeah, exactly what you're talking about. Maybe generative AI music will be something that's more normal to listen to, whereas someone like me, who's got traditional composition, knowing harmony, knowing the different sections of music, that might be too old school as well.
Yes. If I may interact with, sorry, you wanted to go ahead?
Yeah. One of the debate on the essence between the two sides of the ocean, between copyright-minded people which want to stay on my ownership and IE companies, is a very old debate between, it started back in 1928 with Columbia Radio in the States that felt they should not pay for music. So it's not new. But it's not like in 1928, because tech companies doesn't need authorization for zillions of tracks, which are public domain. So when they say we need access to copyrighted work, which is still protected, why would they want these songs rather than public domain songs? So if they do, they make a taste judgment. We want these tracks because they're more modern than others, and we want to sell it to the youth people. In which case, copyright is in essence, because if you want to take any songs which have been recorded prior to 1962 in Europe, copyright is free. So why do you want to take things which have been recorded last year, where producers they spend money, when studio musicians paid night and days to record the album, and when sometimes the main performer used 1 year of his life to be able to go into studio and produce 10 to 12 good tracks.
Yeah, that's the argument of the platform to say, yeah, the songs were publicly available, but we don't know from where. If it's from YouTube, it's not really publicly available, right? You can access it, but it's still a licensed content. I wanted to go back to what you said about the sped-up tracks. It's a very big issue. I don't think it really qualifies as an AI problem, or not even generative AI, but it's really related. And that's what we talked about, Paul, when we were discussing earlier about how generative AI is going to impact the digital scene, and especially streaming, right? Which is where the industry makes the most of its revenues right now. We're talking about 70% of the whole recorded revenues coming from streaming. So it's an important topic. And right now you have 120,000 tracks uploaded every day on platforms. Among that, you have a lot of manipulated tracks, whether they're sped up or slowed down. This creates this idea of confusion that I was talking about, where you don't know which one is the original song, and as the manipulated tracks are not linked to the originals, the artist doesn't get, no, they are not. It's similar to UGC content, and that's why it's more used on TikTok rather than anything else. It can be, I'm not saying that all the manipulated tracks are not related, but some of them definitely are not. And so you lose the revenue that you should get because it's your song that has been manipulated, and also you lose visibility because no one knows that you're the original maker of this song. Well, if you're not born yesterday, you would know who Aerosmith is, right? But and yeah, so 120K tracks uploaded every day on platforms. Suno spitting out hundreds of songs per minute. And these songs can all be uploaded on platforms, so this creates this dilution aspect that Michel was talking about. It means that because of the current streaming model, every stream will contribute to every artist, basically. If you play a song, if you stream a song on Spotify, it will be shared basically between all of the artists on Spotify. That's a lot of artists. And I lost the train of my thought. Dilution.
I think if I could jump in with something, there's another aspect of this which is important and I think particularly relevant to independent music companies, which, as I mentioned before, tend to be founder-led and they tend to focus on a particular area of music. They tend to be territory-focused, they may be genre-focused, they may be quite specialist. What I want to talk about is, why is music so important? I want to go back to the fact that most people that are engaging with music, that love music, do so because there's an emotional connection. And it's an open question as AI develops. If you use Gen AI tools today, if you ask them to spit out a kind of four-to-the-floor standard, something very generic, an EDM track, they spit something out that's very generic and sounds like a lot of other stuff. If you ask a generative AI to create a simple 12-bar blues, it can't, not effectively. So you come back to this kind of what makes music interesting, what makes music special. Two musicians, one can play exactly the same thing as the other. One entirely captivates you, the other doesn't. So there are nuances in music that we don't fully understand. There's very new research, even as recently as 2022, 23, papers being published on emotional encoding in music. What are the messages? What are the emotional messages that are being encoded into music by the performer that are somehow decoded by the audience and understood? And there's new research on parent-infant singing that starts to suggest that babies are able to understand emotional messaging in music sung by their parents, and that we as adults don't lose the ability to decode emotional messaging in music. This is super interesting. And I wonder what happens, no matter how sophisticated AI music gets, none of us know, but I wonder what the outcome will be. Will an AI produce music with emotional encoding in the same way that a human might be able to produce music with emotional encoding? Now, independent music companies who are specialists, genre specialists, niche specialists, tend to be working with artists over a long period of time in a very different way from the majors sometimes. Will that more collaborative, perhaps, more kind of esoteric, wacky, creative space have a closer link to that emotional encoding than, global pop that tends to be the domain of the majors? Again, I don't know. Is there a dilution of emotional encoding when it comes to mass-produced music versus perhaps more curated artisanal music approaches? Again, I don't know. I'm very interested in Michel's view on this as the owner of PIAS.
Yeah, Michel actually has a point. And then I'm going to open up to the floor, unless you remember what your last point was. Okay, so we'll Michel, and then I'm going.
I don't know if people here know how reggae was invented. It was actually people in Jamaica which love rock and roll music, but they had no drum machine, so they were using the bin to the rhythm, and then they missed the stuff and invented the reggae rhythm. You will not expect AI to invent a rhythm which is not existing. That's where human being do have, where important that art creation remains something human. But I don't care. As a music lover, I never question the pedigree of the people which are on that recordings or which are on that scene if I'm going live. I just want emotion. And I don't care if it's a vocoder or ER or whatever. You know, when Depeche Mode came in the market, people say it's not music, it's all machines. In a way, that's exactly what people say now. And another parallel, another historical parallel is that when you see for the moment, especially TikTok, is a tradition back to 1920 as well. From tech companies wanted to avoid paying for copyright to start a label. The first label which was started was called Columbia Broadcasting System, CBS, which ultimately became Sony. And it was started by the radio because they wanted to produce music, to be able to broadcast music without paying copyright. It ended up being a very, very big defendant of copyright, which actually sued TikTok for using his copyrights. So, and we see that again. I mean, Spotify started a label and bought some public domain repertoire, and it turned out to be a disaster. I don't really care as a human being. I just want music to get fun and emotion to everyone. That's it. Whatever is the system.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to go back on what I wanted to say. I just wanted to talk about this oversaturation of the market, the streaming market, and the fact that the AI-generated music is going to increase that exponentially, right? So right now, a study made by the Competition and Market Authority in the UK shows that 80% of the total streams go to 1% of artists on platforms. So you're not impacted by dilution when you're part of this 1% of artists, which are usually the majors. But when you're the 20% the 99% that fight for the 20 remaining percent, that's where dilution kicks in, and the more you have songs uploaded on the platform, the more the revenue pot is diluted within that share of artists. The thing is that, it creates a compound effect because we're talking about the independents, 20%, right? Although, of course, some of big independents will be able to make it to the 1%. But we're talking about a tool that is based on copyrighted content that brings no revenue to artists when it's scraping music, that then creates a song that will have the effect either of moving away the revenues once on the streaming platforms from the independents, or simply ripping off the original songs by creating the same version of the song, basically, but without the name of the artist attached to it. So I think that was important to mention, really, this compound effect that it creates for the independent scene. And you talked about emotion. I do believe it's important, of course. I wonder if everybody thinks the same, because I talked to a lot of friends. You know, when UMG was removing its tracks from its catalog from TikTok, I asked a lot of friends, would it matter to you, as you're a big TikTok user, if the song library available on the platform was the same quality as any song that is created by real artists today, but you knew it was not a real artist, it's just AI generated. And they were like, yeah, I don't care, I just want quality music to go with my cat videos, you know? So I'm just wondering, is everyone looking for emotion when you're listening to music? I hope that's the case, but just, yeah, opening the question.
It's a very good point. I feel like there are a lot of good topics here, but I'm going to open up to the floor. If there are any questions, I'll come over to you with the mic. Yes. Oh, thank you. That's super helpful.
Hello, I'm Mars Mertens from Copyright Delta. I got a question. It's about especially the challenges and opportunities for independent labels. How do you get to the level playing field with the majors? Because the majors are currently sending out all these, not cease and desist, but at least the legal letters to the AI companies. To my opinion, I think it would be, a bit mirror the way how the whole digital licensing is going up. Would there be a place for Merlin to go into this licensing negotiations?
Can I start and you take over? It's a great question. I think what we have to remember is that copyright is an exclusive right. That's the fundamental right. So when there can be then exceptions to the use of this right, but the first and foremost rule is that copyright is an exclusive right. And then you decide whether the exception applies. So when Warner and when Sony are sending these letters to 700 AI companies, it's just an additional thing that they are doing to make sure that the right is protected. But the right, the copyright, is protected by default. So we should really remember that.
Sorry, but also if you look at the text and data mining, it's at least in Europe, you have to by a machine middle manner indicate that you opt out, that you reserve your rights for AI training.
At the end of the day, it's just going to happen if people want to do it. When digital came into the market, we had to do our own licensing deal, and we started Merlin to do it collectively to make sure we were reaching the level playing field. When we move to AI, maybe it's going to be Merlin, maybe we're going to create another agency. I do expect labels to be intelligent and nimble enough and agile enough to find a solution, which is going to be a collective solution, because I don't think the solution is individual.
Yeah, I would challenge whether just because the majors are doing one thing, the independents should be doing the same thing necessarily. Also, I would challenge the view that all three majors act in the same way. They all have very different strategies. Actually, there are commonalities, but they all have very different approaches to how to engage with AI, how to deal with generative AI, what they're investing in, what they're fighting against. You know, these are individual decisions made by individual companies. The threat and opportunity for the independents is that each individual independent is a small company, but the community has generally a stance of collaborative working to bind together, because there's an understanding that together independents are stronger. We saw Merlin come out of that spirit in the same way that Impala, AIM, WIN, other independent bodies have grown over the years. So I think this idea of having a kind of collective approach, but a collective approach that doesn't prohibit individual independence being innovative, collaborative, experimental, because that's what's driven the independent community, and that's what's kept the independent community relevant through all the challenges and changes of the digital music market and all the disruption that's happened over the last 20 years.
There's another question there.
Yeah, a quick one. Yvan from Music Tech Europe. A quick one, because opportunities and challenges for independent labels. I was wondering about your thought about skills. Do you plan, or do you have already, because in labels, independent labels, the skill set or the people who are able to deal with AI, like EMI used to have engineers back in the days in Abbey Road. In labels, do you have the potential, because it seems to be still to be treated as an external phenomenon, an external factor. Do you have some people inside your companies, your organization, to deal with that from a technical perspective, not only a legal perspective? Like, do you work with engineers as people of your world? You see what I mean? It's not just as partners or the other side of the fence.
Can I ask you where you put the frontier?
I don't know.
Because when we do manufacturing CDs, we do have tech people working in our company to make sure that our sound file are capable to be translated into a machine.
But machine learning specialist, I would say.
Yeah.
I've been working 11 years in a label, so I think I know,
Yeah.
but machine learning specialists or engineers of that kind.
Yeah, let me put it a different way. I wouldn't just say on the label side, I would say the artists themselves. There are artists, fantastic artists like Holly Herndon, Imogen Heap, who are right at the cutting edge of innovation. Holly Herndon programmed Spawn, her AI, using her own voice and data set, and did some incredible innovative things. She signed to an independent label, Excel. It's a great example of where I think the expertise needs to stretch through the ecosystem in the same way that years ago, an artist had the luxury of saying, well, I'm an artist, I don't have to concern myself with anything else. The label will take care of it, the manager will take care of it. In the modern era, an artist needs to be somewhat more aware of all of the aspects of the industry. The label needs to be more creative to be successful. And I would say AI is just one other layer that's going to be integrated into that skill set from the artist to their team through the ecosystem.
I think how much time do we have left?
7 minutes.
Okay, so last question then, and then we can wrap up maybe. Thank you.
Hey everybody, Tommy D, Token Tracks, music producer. I'm a kind of outlier because I'm one of those people that just thinks the machine should have everything and just let them go crazy with all the music in the world. And that's coming from a songwriter. But I'd love to know what the panel thinks about, if you could wave a magic wand and just sort of go, okay, I'd like AI, in order to accommodate AI, and so we don't overregulate it too soon, we let it have some freedom. What would you change about the current laws around IP that would accommodate it better?
I have no idea.
Well, that's shit.
You know, they're part of the discussion. I was talking about the AI Act. We were working on this with the legislators as part of coalition. The tech side is doing it as well. They are not left out of the discussions.
I've been in many wars between tech companies and music. When we had trying to get the new copyright directive, YouTube was fascinating in the tactic to explain that essentially music uploaded was for free. At the end of the day, what I've learned through all these years and all these fights, including MTV, it is at the end of the day, we need to keep an opposition, but accept one day to be around the table and find a deal. And it's going to be a deal. And that's why I say I have no idea, because I have no idea what they're ready to compromise and what we globally, I can say where I feel that should be the compromise for me, but we thousands of us, and I can't talk for everyone.
Can I come in
Sorry.
quickly? I think Michel gave the best and most honest answer to that question. I think the process of these debates, these fights, is very important to the solution. I think it's very valuable that nobody has a magic wand, because then all you would get is their outcome, and everybody has their own perspective. The fact that there are these very strenuous debates on all sides means that there's a rigorous process to find the right point of compromise at that point, because it is a balance, it is a trade-off. There are opportunities and threats, there are positives and negatives to each of the decisions you're going to make. So I'm actually a big believer. It's a painful process and it does take time, but I see huge value in that process.
But just to finish on that, maybe you can let the machines go crazy with all the contents you want from the world, but it just has to be licensed first, that's all. Copyright is a protected right, it has to be licensed. The TDM exception would imply that generative AI is an exception. That still has to be proven, it's not the case. The AI Act puts a very strong obligation of results in terms of looking for licenses by platform. It's not an exception, because exception would mean that you don't need to remunerate the artist.
It's true, Angel, where we move from a world where we do a one-off license, be it a blanket agreement or a legal license. At the end of the day, when we, even on legal license, we do license on the legal basis BBC, where we got a report from BBC telling us I broadcast "I Love You Baby" at 1 o'clock in the morning, and we're going to pay for "I Love You Baby." With AI generative, is very different, because it's nearly impossible to identify which songs have been used to produce what songs. So it's just impossible, because they're learning all the day, and it's just like if you think we're going to have a deal based on the one-off licensing, I think we're never going to have a deal.
Right, I guess that's the end. I just want to say, I do think we're sitting at the table together. Here's someone from an AI company, so we can continue this conversation and make sure ethically we're going in the right way. And I think this is the thing that at least I keep coming back to with audio, music, AI, is it's ethically, and this is on every level, from the human aspect to the copyright to the licensing. And then we haven't even touched on the sustainability topic, which is not for here. But I mean, that's a huge thing, is what's going on there. Thank you so much for this. I hope we can continue the conversation at least. And please, everyone, go and chat to these lovely people if you have more questions. And we're going to wrap up. Thank you.
Thank you.